The Kethver battleship Dominion's Edge hung in Earth's orbit like a predator studying its prey. Commander Zethkar examined the readings from their long-range sensors, his forearms working efficiently across the holographic displays. The third planet of this unremarkable system had surprised them with its response to their arrival instead of immediate surrender. The inhabitants had actually fired projectiles at their ships. "Primitives," he muttered, watching as another barrage of what the locals called missiles exploded harmlessly against their energy shields. The deflectors didn't even register the impact as noteworthy. Analysis of their weapons, Sub-Commander Vextel. The intelligence officer's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among their species. "Chemical propellants, Commander. They use controlled explosions to launch metal projectiles. Some of their larger weapons appear to use nuclear fission warheads, but the yield is laughably small. Their most advanced fighters carry energy weapons, but they're barely above the level of industrial cutting tools." Zethkar's eyes, all 6 of them, focused on the tactical display showing Earth's major population centers. Cities sprawled across the continents like bacterial colonies, completely undefended by any meaningful technology. No energy barriers, no gravitational deflectors, no quantum disruptors. Nothing but concrete structures and those pathetic chemical-powered weapons. What about their ground forces? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Even more primitive, sir. They carry individual projectile weapons rifles and pistols that fire single metal slugs using gunpowder. Some have automatic firing capabilities, but they're still just launching bits of shaped metal. Our personal combat armor can withstand direct hits from their largest vehicle-mounted weapons without any shield assistance." The commander allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be simpler than their conquest of the Thailand system, where at least the defenders had possessed basic plasma technology. These humans were so far behind the galactic standard that it was almost disappointing. "Begin the surface assault," he ordered. "Deploy Ground Marshal Crixton with the 18th Assault Legion. I want major population centers secured within 2 standard time units. Minimal casualties on our side. These primitives aren't worth losing good soldiers over." The Ground Marshal's image appeared in the communication array, his scarred face showing the confidence of a warrior who had conquered 17 worlds. "It will be done, Commander. Should we expect any significant resistance?" "Negative. Their weapons are ineffective against our basic combat armor. Treat this as a training exercise for the new recruits." 3 hours later, Crixton was beginning to wonder if the humans understood the concept of surrender. The first wave of assault troops had landed outside New York City expecting token resistance followed by quick capitulation. Instead, they found themselves facing organized military. Units that seemed determined to fight despite the obvious futility of their position. The Ground Marshal watched through his helmet display as human soldiers fired their primitive rifles at his advancing troops. The bullets, actual metal bullets, struck their armor and bounced off harmlessly, creating small sparks but no damage. Some of his soldiers weren't even bothering to take cover, walking upright through the barrage as if strolling through a light rain. "Pathetic," muttered Sergeant Vakar, leader of 3rd Squad. "Their weapons couldn't penetrate our armor even without shields active. This isn't a battle, it's target practice." But the humans kept fighting. Even as their comrades fell to Kethver plasma weapons, even as their vehicles exploded under directed energy fire, they maintained their positions and continued shooting. Crixton had to admit a grudging respect for their courage. Even if their tactics were suicidal, the assault force pushed deeper into the city, encountering pockets of resistance at every intersection. Human soldiers fired from windows, from behind overturned vehicles, from rooftops. Their bullets created a constant metallic drumming against Kethver armor, but might as well have been throwing rocks for all the damage they caused. "Ground Marshal," came the voice of Squad Leader Thekarin over the comm. "We have secured the government building they call City Hall. Local forces are regrouping in Central Park. Should we pursue?" "Affirmative. Maintain formation and advance. Watch for explosive devices. They seem fond of their chemical bombs." As if summoned by his words, a human military vehicle rounded the corner ahead, its main cannon swiveling toward the Kethver formation. The tank's massive gun fired, sending a large projectile directly at the lead squad. The shell struck Corporal Dexmick in the chest, exploded, and sent him staggering backward 3 steps. "Status report, Corporal," Crixton called, concerned despite himself. "Minor scorch marks on armor plating, sir." "No penetration. My personal shields weren't even activated." The young soldier sounded almost disappointed that he hadn't faced a more challenging opponent. The tank fired again, and again. Each shot struck with tremendous force and impressive accuracy, but against armor designed to withstand starship-grade weapons, the human projectiles might as well have been spitballs. Crixton ordered the tank destroyed more out of annoyance than necessity. The constant impacts were becoming tiresome. A single plasma bolt from Trooper Zendel's rifle vaporized the tank and a significant portion of the street around it. The remaining human forces in the area finally broke and ran, though Crixton noted they carried their wounded with them and maintained discipline even in retreat. "Interesting," he mused. "They show tactical awareness and unit cohesion. If they possessed adequate weapons, they might actually pose a challenge." The battle, if it could be called that, continued throughout the day. Human forces employed every strategy they could think of: ambush tactics, coordinated crossfires, heavy weapons concentrations, even primitive aircraft loaded with explosives. Nothing worked. The Kethvar armor was simply too advanced, designed for warfare against opponents who wielded energy weapons and kinetic barriers. By evening, the 18th Assault Legion had secured most of Manhattan. Human casualties were in the thousands, while the Kethvar had suffered exactly 0 fatalities and only minor equipment damage from a few lucky explosive hits. It was, Crixton reflected, probably the most one-sided battle in the Legion's history. "Commander Zethkar," he reported to the orbiting battleship, "surface operations proceeding as expected. Local resistance is determined but completely ineffective. Their projectile weapons cannot penetrate our armor systems. Estimated time to full planetary submission, 72 hours. "Excellent work, Ground Marshal." "Any noteworthy tactical developments?" "Negative, sir." The humans fight with admirable courage but primitive technology. Their strategy appears to be fire more bullets, which is hardly a winning approach against energy shielding. What Crixton didn't mention, because he didn't yet know, was that 300 miles north of New York City, in a small cabin in the Adirondack Mountains, a man named Marcus Webb was cleaning his rifle and watching the news reports with growing anger. Marcus had spent 15 years in the United States Marine Corps, including 6 combat deployments and 3 years as a sniper instructor at Quantico. His service record included confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 1,200 meters, often in challenging conditions that would have defeated lesser marksmen. When the aliens landed, his first instinct had been to report for duty. But the military networks were in chaos and his old unit was scattered across the globe. So he did what Marines do when the situation becomes unclear. He prepared to adapt and overcome. The rifle he was cleaning wasn't military issue. It was a custom-built .338 Lapua Magnum bolt-action weapon, precision-engineered for extreme long-range accuracy. The scope alone cost more than most people's cars, capable of calculating windage, elevation, and atmospheric conditions automatically. Marcus had built this rifle for hunting, but hunting and sniping used many of the same skills. On his workbench lay boxes of hand-loaded ammunition, each cartridge crafted to exacting specifications. The bullets were match-grade boat tails designed for maximum ballistic coefficient, capable of maintaining supersonic velocity at distances where most projectiles would be tumbling through the air. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the rifle's capabilities as he watched Alien soldiers walk through machine gun fire without flinching. He was thinking about something his old sniper instructor had taught him 20 years ago. "It's not the weapon that makes the shot, Webb, it's the man behind it." The news showed aliens in what appeared to be advanced body armor, moving with confidence through human defensive positions. Their technology was clearly superior, But Marcus had spent his career studying how to defeat superior opponents. The key was finding the weak points, the gaps. The places where even advanced armor couldn't provide complete protection. He studied the footage carefully, watching how the aliens moved, how they held their weapons, how they positioned themselves during firefights. Every piece of equipment had limitations. Every design had compromises. Marcus just had to find them. Outside his cabin, snow was beginning to fall. Marcus Webb methodically loaded his rifle and began to plan. The aliens might have energy shields and advanced armor, but they had never faced a Marine Scout sniper who had spent 2 decades perfecting the art of killing at impossible distance. Marcus Webb spent 3 days studying the alien patrol patterns around Albany before he made his first shot. The Kethver forces had established a forward operating base in the city, using it as a staging point for operations throughout the northeastern United States. Their arrogance was evident in their security procedures, or rather, the lack thereof. The aliens moved in the open, rarely taking cover, their formations loose and casual. Why wouldn't they be confident? For 5 days, they had faced everything the human military could throw at them without suffering a single casualty. Their armor had proven invulnerable to bullets, shells, missiles, and even close-range explosive charges, but Marcus had noticed something the other human forces had missed. The aliens wore helmets, but those helmets had visors, transparent sections that allowed them to see. Transparent meant light could pass through, and if light could pass through, then under the right circumstances, so could a bullet, the physics were straightforward. The visor material was obviously advanced, probably some form of transparent aluminum or synthetic diamond, but it still had to be thin enough for visibility and flexible enough for the wearer to move their head. That meant compromises in the design. Weak points that could be exploited by someone who understood ballistics and had the skill to make an impossible shot. Marcus positioned himself on a ridge, overlooking the aliens' patrol route, exactly 847 meters from where they would pass. He had chosen the location after careful reconnaissance, accounting for wind patterns, elevation differences, and escape routes. The morning air was still, with minimal atmospheric disturbance, perfect conditions for precision shooting. Through his scope, he watched a patrol of 6 Kethver soldiers walking along what used to be Interstate 87. They moved with the casual confidence of beings who considered themselves invulnerable. The lead soldier, identifiable by additional markings on his armor, was gesturing with his weapon as he spoke to his companions. Marcus controlled his breathing, settling into the familiar rhythm of preparation. Inhale, exhale, natural respiratory pause. His finger found the trigger, applying exactly 2 pounds of pressure on a trigger that would fire at 4.5 pounds. The crosshairs aligned on the patrol leader's visor, tracking the alien's movement with smooth precision. Wind, negligible. Range, 847 meters. Target moving at approximately 2 miles per hour on a predictable path. Elevation, 14 degrees down angle. Atmospheric pressure, standard. Temperature, 34 degrees Fahrenheit. The calculations were automatic. Muscle memory developed over thousands of practice shots and dozens of combat engagements. Marcus didn't think about the math, his body simply knew where to aim. The patrol leader took another step, moving directly into Marcus's predetermined firing solution. The Marine sniper increased trigger pressure smoothly, steadily, until the rifle fired. The .338 Lapua Magnum cartridge sent a 250-grain match, bullet downrange at 2,940 feet per second. The projectile covered the distance to target in 1.2 seconds, arriving with over 2,800 foot-pounds of kinetic energy focused into an area smaller than a pencil eraser. The bullet struck the center of the patrol leader's visor and punched through for a moment. Marcus thought he had missed. The alien staggered but didn't fall, and his companions didn't react with the alarm he expected. Then he saw the spray of purple fluid alien blood spattering the ground behind the leader's position. The Kethver patrol leader dropped his weapon and collapsed to his knees, hands clutching at his helmet. Purple blood leaked from the entry hole in his visor as his companions finally realized what had happened. Marcus was already moving. having fired from a prepared position with multiple exit routes. He heard alien voices shouting in their incomprehensible language as he gathered his equipment, and began his withdrawal to a secondary position 3 miles away, ground. Marshal Crixton stared at the body of squad leader Thekarin in disbelief. In 5 days of planetary assault operations, this was their first casualty. More disturbing than the death itself was the method. A single projectile had somehow penetrated the squad leader's visor and killed him instantly. Analysis. He demanded from the forensics specialist. Examining the helmet. Single projectile entry, sir. The impact point shows characteristics consistent with the chemical-propelled weapons the humans favor. But the penetration is ... usual. Our visor material is rated to stop any kinetic projectile these primitives can produce. Yet here we are, looking at a dead soldier, Crixton observed dryly. Yes, sir. The projectile appears to have struck with extreme precision at the exact center of the visor, where the curvature creates a slight structural weakness. Additionally, the angle of impact was perfectly perpendicular to the surface, maximizing penetration potential. The ground marshal examined the helmet himself. The entry hole was barely visible, a clean puncture no larger than his smallest finger. Around it, the advanced polymer showed stress fractures radiating outward like a spider web. What are the odds of such a precise impact occurring by chance? Statistically impossible, sir. This shot required extreme precision, accounting for range, wind, atmospheric conditions, and target movement. The firing position would need to be elevated and at considerable distance to achieve the observed angle of impact. Crixton felt an uncomfortable sensation he hadn't experienced in years of combat operations. Uncertainty. You're suggesting this was not a random lucky shot? I'm suggesting, sir, that this human possessed capabilities far exceeding what we've observed from their military forces. The ground marshal ordered increased patrols and enhanced security procedures. But privately he wondered if he was overreacting to a single anomalous incident. Perhaps the shot had been lucky after all. Surely these primitive humans couldn't reproduce such precision consistently. Marcus Webb proved him wrong 6 hours later. The second shot came from a completely different direction, over 1,200 meters from the site of the first kill. This time, the target was a lone Kethver sentry posted on the roof of what had been Albany Medical Center. The alien was scanning the surrounding area with some form of advanced optical equipment, probably looking for the sniper who had killed his comrade. Marcus had positioned himself in the ruins of a shopping mall, firing through a carefully prepared loophole in the concrete wall. The range was extreme even for his capabilities, but the target was stationary and clearly visible against the hospital's white roof. The wind was stronger than during his morning shot, gusting from the southwest at 8 to 12 miles per hour. Marcus compensated by aiming 18 inches upwind of his target, trusting his experience and training to account for the bullet's drift during its 3-second flight time. The .338 bullet struck the sentry in the side of his helmet, finding the small gap where the visor connected to the main armor section. It was an impossible shot by any reasonable standard, threading a needle at over 3/4 of a mile through gusty wind, hitting a target area smaller than a coin. But Marcus Webb had been making impossible shots for 20 years. The sentry toppled from the roof, his body striking the pavement below with an impact that could be heard 3 blocks away. Marcus was already disassembling his rifle and preparing to move to his third prepared position. By evening, he had killed 6 aliens. Each shot had been different range, different angle, different atmospheric conditions, but all had shared the same characteristics: single-shot kills, perfect precision, and no opportunity for the enemy to locate the firing position. Marcus used his mobility and knowledge of the terrain to stay ahead of alien search teams, never firing from the same location twice. Commander Zethkar studied the casualty reports with growing alarm. 6 of his best soldiers dead in a single day, all killed by projectile weapons that should have been incapable of penetrating Kethver armor. The forensic analysis was consistent across all incidents, precisely aimed shots that found microscopic weak points in their protective equipment. "Ground Marshal," he said over the communication link. "I want an explanation for these losses." Crixton's image showed stress patterns around his eyes that Zethkar had never seen before. "Sir, we appear to be facing an individual with capabilities far beyond the norm for this species. The precision required for these shots is extraordinary. Each kill demonstrates an understanding of our armors. Vulnerabilities that should be impossible for these primitives to possess. Are you telling me that one human with a primitive projectile weapon is terrorizing an entire assault legion? I'm telling you, Commander, that we are dealing with someone who has turned projectile warfare into an art form. Our soldiers are beginning to show signs of stress. They no longer move with confidence, and several have requested permission to activate personal shielding, even though it reduces their operational endurance." Zethkar found himself in the unfamiliar position of being concerned about ground operations. What are our options? We could withdraw to defensive positions and rely on orbital bombardment to clear the area. Unacceptable. We need these population centers intact for the occupation phase. What about hunting down this sniper? We've tried, sir. He never fires from the same location twice, and by the time our response teams reach the firing position, he's long gone. Our thermal imaging can't track him through the urban environment, and he appears to have extensive EM. The alien commanders made their fatal mistake on the 7th day when they decided to end the sniper threat through overwhelming force. Ground Marshal Crixton, frustrated by the psychological impact Marcus Webb was having on his troops, ordered a massive sweep operation involving 3 full companies over 300 Kethver soldiers supported by aerial reconnaissance and heavy weapons teams. Their plan was simple: saturate a 6-square-kilometer area with troops, flush out the sniper, and eliminate him through superior numbers. What they didn't understand was that Marcus had been anticipating exactly this response. For 3 days, the Marine had been preparing a killing ground in the hills northeast of Albany. He had scouted every approach route, identified choke points where large formations would be forced to compress their movements, and prepared multiple firing positions connected by concealed paths he had used as a hunting guide years before his military service. Most importantly, he had been studying the aliens' command structure and identifying their leadership. Marcus positioned himself in a natural rock formation that provided excellent concealment and multiple exit routes. From this position, he could observe the main approach route the alien sweep would need to use a valley that funneled all movement through a space barely 400 meters wide. At 0630 hours, the Kethver forces entered his killing ground. Through his scope, Marcus watched the alien formations advance with professional discipline. They had learned from his previous attacks, maintaining proper intervals, using terrain for cover, and keeping their personal shields active. At the center of the formation, he spotted his primary target, Ground Marshal Crixton himself, identifiable by the distinctive command markings on his armor and the way subordinates oriented themselves around his position. The range was 673 meters, well within Marcus's capabilities, but challenging because of the angle and the fact that his target was moving with a protective formation around him. The Ground Marshal was clearly experienced in combat operations, never exposing himself unnecessarily and staying behind cover whenever possible. Marcus waited. Patience was perhaps the most crucial skill for a sniper, and Marcus had developed his over years of operations where a single moment of impatience could mean mission failure or death. He watched the alien formation move through the valley, tracking individual soldiers, memorizing their positions, waiting for the perfect opportunity. It came when the formation reached a bend in the valley, where the terrain forced them to compress their spacing. For exactly 8 seconds, Ground Marshal Crixton would be exposed as he moved from behind one rock outcropping to another. Marcus began his breathing cycle as the alien commander approached the danger zone. Inhale, exhale, natural respiratory pause. His crosshairs tracked smoothly across the anticipated path of movement. The Ground Marshal stepped into the open space between cover positions. Marcus's finger moved smoothly through the trigger press, applying steady pressure until the rifle fired. The .338 bullet crossed the distance in less than a second, striking Crixton's visor at the exact moment the alien commander turned to issue orders to his trailing units. The impact drove the Kethver leader backward 3 steps before he collapsed. The command formation around him erupted into chaos as subordinates realized their leader had been killed by an enemy they couldn't even see, but Marcus wasn't. Finished. In the confusion following their commander's death, the alien forces made the mistake of clustering together around the body. From Marcus's elevated position, the gathering looked like a target-rich environment that any infantry instructor would have used as an example of what not to do under sniper fire. Marcus smoothly worked his rifle's bolt action, chambering a fresh round. His second target was the officer attempting to take command, identifiable by his gestures and the way other aliens were responding to him. The range was slightly greater, 694 meters, but the target was stationary as he tried to establish radio contact with his superiors. The second shot took the new commander in the side of his helmet, exploiting the same gap Marcus had found during his previous engagements. The alien officer dropped to his knees, then fell forward onto his face. Now the alien formation was truly in disarray. Soldiers were scattered, seeking cover, shouting in their incomprehensible language as they tried to locate the source of the accurate fire that was systematically eliminating their leadership. Marcus fired a third shot, then a fourth, each one carefully aimed at specific targets that appeared to be trying to organize a response. His years of training had taught him that eliminating leadership was the most effective way to neutralize a superior force, and the aliens were demonstrating the universal truth that even advanced technology couldn't replace competent command and control. After his sixth shot, Marcus began his withdrawal to a predetermined fallback position. The aliens would eventually organize a response, and staying in one location too long was a mistake that could cost him his life. But as he moved through the concealed paths he had prepared, Marcus could hear something that made him pause, the sound of alien voices, but different from the organized military communications he had heard before. These voices sounded uncertain, even frightened. Commander Zethkar stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. In less than an hour, a single human sniper had killed Ground Marshal Crixton and 5 other senior officers, effectively decapitating the ground assault command structure. The psychological impact on the surviving troops was severe. Many were refusing to leave their fortified positions, and requests for immediate evacuation were flooding the communication channels. "Subcommander Vextal," he called to his intelligence officer, "I need a complete reassessment of human military capabilities." "Sir, based on our observations of this single individual, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood this species' potential for warfare." Explain. "The precision demonstrated by this sniper suggests that humans may possess individual combat skills that rival or exceed our own. We assumed their primitive weapons made them ineffective soldiers, but we failed to account for the human factor, their ability to maximize the potential of whatever tools they possess." Zethkar considered this assessment. In their conquest of 17 worlds, they had faced species with superior technology, advanced energy weapons, even limited gravitational manipulation capabilities. But they had never encountered opponents who could turn primitive projectile weapons into precision instruments of warfare. What about their other military forces? Could they have more individuals with similar capabilities? "Unknown, sir. This sniper operates alone, which prevented us from determining whether his skills are common among humans or represent an exceptional individual. However, the tactical knowledge he demonstrates suggests extensive training and experience. It's possible that humans have developed specialized warriors specifically for this type of warfare." The commander felt something he had rarely experienced in his career: doubt about the outcome of a military operation. How many others like him could there be? Conservative estimate based on population statistics and military organization patterns? Several thousand, possibly tens of thousands. Zethkar's blood went cold. The image of thousands of human snipers, each capable of the precision and tactical sophistication they had witnessed. Operating across Earth's continents was terrifying. His assault forces would be picked apart before they could establish effective control over the major population centers. "New orders," he announced. "All ground operations are suspended immediately. Withdraw all forces to orbital positions." "Sir." "That will allow the humans time to organize their resistance and study our technology. Better than losing the entire assault force to an enemy we clearly don't understand." Marcus Webb received the news of the alien withdrawal from emergency broadcast on his portable radio. Human resistance forces worldwide were reporting that the alien ground troops were pulling back to their ships, abandoning positions they had held for over a week. He wasn't surprised. In his experience, bullies, whether human or alien, typically back down when faced with determined resistance from someone who refused to be intimidated. The Kethver had expected easy conquest against primitive opponents, but they had encountered something they hadn't prepared for: a human warrior who treated warfare as both science and art. But Marcus knew the withdrawal was only temporary. The aliens would regroup, reassess, and return with different tactics. When they did, humanity needed to be ready. He activated his satellite phone. Military communications were slowly being restored and placed a call to the Pentagon. After identifying himself and providing his service credentials, he was connected directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "This is Colonel Martinez, Marine Corps Intelligence," came the voice on the other end. "Master Sergeant Webb, we've been tracking reports of sniper activity in your area. Can you confirm your operational status?" "Confirmed, Colonel. Single operator, engaging alien ground forces with precision rifle fire. I've eliminated multiple targets, including their ground force commander." "Outstanding work, Marine. We're seeing alien withdrawal worldwide, and intelligence suggests your actions may have been a contributing factor. Can you provide operational recommendations for other sniper teams?" Marcus smiled as he began his tactical briefing. The aliens had made the Me